to introduce the next speaker, Ken Dalton. Ken Dalton is the CEO of AECOM Europe. And Ken's going to talk to us about some of the sustainable work that AECOM and their partners have been doing around the world. And he's going to touch on a report that I know that was produced in 2002 in London on sustainability. And 2002 is only 5-6 years ago. But actually, as we all know, in the development of sustainability, that's quite an age ago. So I think AECOM were instrumental in moving forward some of this work, certainly in London. So could you please put your hands together for Ken?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. Globally, there's an increasing demand for sustainable buildings driven by public awareness and the challenges offered by climate change. In considering how we maintain and improve tall buildings, we've got to consider the context of the development, the active participation of investors, developers, landlords, tenants, and then we look at the joined-up supply chain of designers, constructors, maintenance, and operating people in the building. If we look at the context of the building, people generally have focused on green buildings, which are low-rise buildings, as exemplars. And the reason that they do this is because it's more easy to see solutions of low carbon and low water use. The building on the left is an exemplar project in the UK. Very low energy use, building integrated renewables, a green roof, very low water consumption, and using green materials, in this case, hemp construction, that actually sequesters carbon into the building structure. On the right, obviously a tall building situation is seen as being less sustainable. In many parts of the world, rapid urbanisation and the need for more resource-efficient cities, combined with land use and transport constraints, means that high-rise solutions can be argued as the only sustainable answer to the need to accommodate large numbers of people within easy access of public transport links. As such, the development context is therefore key as to whether tall buildings are sustainable indeed. Given this overriding position, what we've got to then determine is how sustainable a particular tall building development can be. In 2002, as Anthony mentioned, AECOM produced a groundbreaking review of tall buildings and sustainability for the Corporation of London. Since that time, of course, globally, there has been a significant change in approach, resulting in many more discussions and solutions of sustainability for tall buildings. This presentation this morning considers the key drivers of sustainability in the UK, recognising that many of the situations there are now being passed around the world. It identifies major challenges in delivering these sustainable tall buildings, both from a design and operational perspective, and reviews examples of how to achieve sustainability in practice. If we look at the definitions of sustainability, historically it's unfortunately been used, however, as a means of branding and selling a particular project or company. This reflects the feel-good factor associated with the sense of the word sustainability and the public's general desire to ensure that we leave the world a better place for future generations. The inappropriate use of the word sustainability is often to brand a project or, in fact, a brand of a product as greenwash. So greenwash is not a title that I think really does us any favours. Specific services sold under the banner of sustainability include corporate social responsibility and carbon management. However, I think the most accurate definition of sustainability is the approach that takes on board consideration of the social, environmental and economic issues of a project. As such, those involved in tall building design really have to ensure that this is a mindset and being part of the DNA of the project team. I apologise for the slide. It's on 2 occasions it seems to flip back into smaller text for those at the back of the room. If we consider the typical model that was the property supply chain in recent years, traditionally one of the major barriers to adopting a more sustainable approach to tall buildings has been the way in which the various supply chains interact. There are different investor, developer, landlord, tenant relationships, and traditionally tall buildings have often been occupied by a number of tenants, and sustainability has not been the key issue. Investors are usually looking at short-term returns when it comes to property investment decisions, and they're also being influenced by developers whose focus is on current market rates, as opposed to what may happen as a differential rate where they were looking at a green solution. Developers may well wish to invest in green buildings at that time, but they saw limited financial advantage in doing so, and therefore they also saw the potential of additional risk. Landlords were driven largely by financial returns offered by a particular building, and tenants who wanted perhaps a green solution were often then constrained by their operation requirements and physical location. I'm pleased to say I think the move in the most recent years is seeing advances in this approach. In the UK, the government over recent years have been very active, introducing a number of legislative initiatives aimed at addressing key sustainability issues such as energy use and carbon emissions. The documents here are some of the many planning and regulatory initiatives in recent years where AECOM has assisted the UK government with technical advice, helping to set the agenda. For example, the documents are planning and policy statements, building a green future, and Part L building regulations related to energy emissions. On the planning side, these changes have led to there being a requirement for buildings to generate typically between 10 and 20% of their energy from site renewables. London took the lead very much in this by implementing the requirement and drawing up, again with ourselves, the London Renewables Toolkit, which gave guidance to developers and planners on the types and levels of renewable energy sources that were appropriate for a particular development. The requirement of, say, 20% renewables in tall buildings could in fact give us greater problems, which I will come to later. The UK government continues to review policy and recently announced that new homes from 2016 would have to be carbon neutral. There has been very much speculation as to what their next move may be for non-residential developments, and it's this perception of future changes that is driving market sentiment. The market certainly has changed, and we've been hearing about that over the last few days, principally due to the client requirements and also environmental labelling schemes. BREEAM, that's the Building Research and Environmental Assessment Method, which was actually co-developed by the Building Research Establishment and AECOM some 15 years ago, was the forerunner of many of the environmental labelling schemes we hear about around the world today, including LEED in the US. Sentiment amongst government and private sector developers mean that BREEAM assessment or its variants are now the norm for major private and public sector developments. The building on the left is one in Canary Wharf, which recently achieved a BREEAM Excellent rating. Developers are now requiring BREEAM Excellence or BREEAM Very Good rating for their buildings. And they're seeing that now they are requesting a BREEAM Outstanding rating for exemplar buildings in the environmental field. BREEAM and LEED have certainly transformed the market. They've been very good in raising the green credentials, environmental performance of a building. However, It's now the BREEAM situation has now developed into that we now check whether the completed building has actually implemented the design features. BREEAM indeed, however, have some constraints, and they are three. The first is that they are based on a point scheme from the KPIs listed here: energy, transport, pollution, water, materials, ecology, land use, health and well-being, and management. However, there is no particular importance given to any of these issues for a specific site. True sustainability is a mindset, not a tick-box exercise, and as such, BREEAM and LEED is a proxy for sustainability. Not all sustainability issues are covered by these two environmental labelling schemes, and by their very nature, they are limited in effectiveness to the performance of the building. And as David mentioned at the beginning of this morning, BREEAM is now developing an in-use arrangement in the same way as LEED is developing a performance LEAP arrangement. Professional practice has not stood still during this momentum shift. And indeed in Europe, I think they've been leading the charge. AECOM has recently helped identify the sustainability requirements by producing this guide for the Chartered Institution of Building Services Engineers. We've also done some work with the HVCA, that's the Heating and Ventilating Contractors Association, working with them in a strategy guide for the industry, and for the RICS, the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, on a sustainable policy for fit-out. As professionals, we can no longer say that we're just providing good practice. It's our duty to advise clients of the need for sustainability within their projects. Major clients already see the importance of corporate social responsibility. For example, Marks & Spencer's, who are a major retailer within the UK, have introduced Plan A because there is no Plan B, where the company is pledged to tackle a wide range of environmental and social issues. One of the key drivers for Marks & Spencer's was the growing pressure from consumers that their stores should operate in a sustainable way. Marks & Spencer's are not alone. The majority of quality corporate companies now recognise that how they operate in terms of sustainability reflects on their brand and their reputation. Government regulations will further emphasise this move. On the right is an energy performance certificate that will be required shortly by all buildings in Europe when they're constructed, sold or rented out. Such publicity, together with the increasing demand by the public, will influence purchasing decisions for major corporates and through them influence the property and construction supply chains. In addition, major corporates you see now on the stock market are looking to influence shareholders through their sustainability credentials. In the US, it's the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, and in the UK, it's the FTSE, Financial Times FTSE for Good. Well, what's about the new model for sustainability? What is our challenge? I believe it's one where sustainability has an increasing role to play. Legislative, regulatory and client drivers are therefore moving the tall buildings property supply chain to a new paradigm, supporting a sustainable approach. Investors desire long-term investments, and these now see value and risk management associated with sustainable buildings. They also see that the market sentiment will not accept a building without a very good or excellent BREEAM or LEED rating, and that they accept that there is an expectation that rentable values will increase due to sustainability credentials. They're also aware of the potential for government change, again further increasing the need for sustainable regulation. All in all, I don't think this may be universal. We're certainly seeing it in Europe, but I think we cannot ignore it going forward. What other challenges? Well, from a design construction, operation and supply chain, there are many. In construction worldwide, there has been a collective failure to systematically assess the performance of completed projects and feed that outcome back to the supply chain as a whole. If any of the supply chain is not aligned with the property supply chain objectives, the sustainability arrangements will not be achieved in practice. In the UK, we're already seeing an increased uptake in post-occupancy review, giving help to the feedback cycle. What we also need to ensure is a more consistent pairing of both property and construction supply chains, such that the common objectives for sustainability are actually delivered. Looking now at energy, there are two principal areas here of requirements: building regulations, which are centring on carbon emissions in buildings, and planning requirements through regulation demanding 20% renewables from within building new buildings. I think when we look at tall buildings, we will find that 20% renewables, as I said earlier, may be unrealistic, but we have to try. At present, the regulations say that building integrated or site integrated renewables are eligible as part of the London Plan, but the development of far off renewables, for example those from wind farms offshore, would not be calculated within the 20% amount. At the heart of this decision is the vision that within the London Plan they wish decentralised power supply within the city, powered by renewables and low carbon sources. Many argue against this policy. For example, the cost of reducing carbon emissions through building integrated renewables is often higher than developing energy from offshore wind farms in terms of pounds invested against tonnes of carbon saved. Experience in the UK so far has also shown that buildings with mounted wind turbines often deliver less significant energy supplies. If you can imagine a tall building in the conurbation, it's unlikely that the opportunity to put a wind turbine would exist in that situation. However, going back to the London Plan, the rationale of actually ensuring that, or insisting that 20% of the energy is from renewables on site is really that they wish to increase the whole process of energy efficiency and awareness, and also create greater innovation from renewable technologies. If we then turn to some of the solutions. In Shanghai, there is a need for tall buildings because of the rapid urbanization and development. AECOM are the structural engineers on this particular project, the Shanghai International Finance Center. A key requirement of the building to be sustainable is that it means its function requirements suit both now and the future. And the future also includes the situation surrounding climate change. There are many ways the building can be made more sustainable, including energy efficient design, material selection, and overall approach to structural design. As a specific example of sustainability influencing structural outcomes, the following was examined. So, for example, our designers are looking at a number of range of opportunities, and we have tried to select arguably the most sustainable considered. So we'll try and, I'm sorry you can't read this most probably from the back, but the reasons that we've selected this are: the design gives maximum flexibility in terms of use of the space. The amount of material used in the structure is much less with this option than with the alternatives. And overall, maximising the space and minimising material, whilst giving ultimate flexibility within the building, must be the most sustainable solution. It's also a win-win because lower material costs relate to lower construction costs. There are obviously many more sophisticated arrangements in terms of selecting materials with lower or different environmental impacts. In the UK, for example, you could argue that the use of steel instead of concrete was more sustainable due to the issues surrounding cement production. For example, 1 tonne of cement in the UK is responsible for 1 tonne of carbon dioxide, whereas the production of constructional steelwork has a relatively low embodied energy because of its high recycled content. Discussions of this technical nature are always complex. However, it is important to engage in the debate because sustainability is a mindset and we have collectively to find the correct solution. Another potential solution may be reuse of existing foundations. The top picture shows a piling foundation that has been isolated to allow testing before reuse. And below one of the buildings where we have actually used reused foundation, which was Barclays Bank headquarters in London. Clearly there are limits to this approach, particularly with super tall buildings. The advantages where it's applicable are significant. Reduced material, fewer lorry movements, both of which reduce greenhouse gases. The disruption to communities and traffic movements are reduced. The reuse of foundations reduces soil waste, particularly important where tall buildings are concerned. Again, looking at the construction, sustainability is not just about energy use and carbon emissions. It's also about using our resources efficiently. Using these resources provides low energy results. This illustration shows a rapid construction technique that minimises material and waste through the use of prefabricated components that results in less waste, greater recycling, fewer journeys to site, all in all contributing to a more sustainable approach. This is only one example, there are many more. Resource minimisation in construction is also key in tall building sustainable developments. It's essential that the final project maintains the function requirements of the client now and the future. And we have to evaluate the use of materials to provide the best space and the most comfortable living accommodation. Here is an example of a construction approach that aims to maximise the work area within the development. Looking now to energy strategy. A development's energy strategy is key these days to meeting planning requirements in London and in many other parts of the UK. Where 20% of the energy is required from renewables on site, the technical opportunities and challenges for tall buildings are different from those found in low-rise buildings. For high-rise buildings, detailed thermal modelling is needed to minimise energy use and to identify the glazing solutions that provide optimal balance between visual, aesthetic, daylighting and solar protection. And the inherent complexity of design and the challenges associated with modelling local wind microclimate also affects the ventilation design. There are a range of renewable technologies as listed here, including solar, wind, geothermal, fuel, CHP or trigeneration, and the use of biofuels. None are always going to be used on each project, and each project has to be looked at as to the benefits of the use of those renewable technologies. Mechanical and electrical strategy is key, and we've been hearing a lot, I think, over the last couple of days about architecture and structural engineering, which is key to the success, obviously, of the tall buildings. However, I think it would be inappropriate if we were not to consider that holistic design of a successful building can only be done if mechanical, electrical, and public health matters are considered holistically. Renewable energy strategy is just part of the building's energy strategy. The carbon emissions from a building can be most effectively minimised by excellent M&E design. It's essential to looking at the M&E services and building integrated renewables as part of this holistic solution. Once the concept is developed, its implementation using various high-efficiency lighting, air conditioning and people movement systems, together with good control and management systems, is required to optimise energy use. And obviously, efficient commissioning and operational issues must be addressed at the design stage. This is an example of a building, cut through a building in fact in Dubai, where we were just doing an analysis of potential energy-saving renewable techniques. Coming to a few examples, the BBC North. The BBC North is in fact a building based in Manchester, where sustainability is to be embedded in all of the mechanical, electrical and public health design and facade considerations from the project. AECOM have provided a range of sustainability services, including environmental facade design, energy and carbon assessments, sustainability consultancy, dynamic thermal modelling, computational fluid dynamics to assist our MEP design to meet their stringent sustainability challenges. Extensive energy studies of all the buildings were undertaken using dynamic thermal modelling to predict solar gain, daylight levels and energy performance, which enabled an integrated building services strategy be developed and linked to optimise environmental performance. The hourly analysis also enabled us to look at the suitability and feasibility of renewable energy techniques to be assessed in detail. Overall, the team must be very proactive in coordinating a full responsibility for sustainability. Sustainability can only be achieved by team effort. This is a high-rise building, high-rise for the UK, I have to say, 30 stories, in Leicester, which is currently in design. In this situation, we're redeveloping on a brownfield site, and we will be providing energy through 20% renewables using ground source heat pumps and photovoltaic cells. We're using the canal to assist the heat source arrangements. So really, to try and summarise, when we receive a brief for a tall, sustainable building, there are always a number of steps that need to be considered. Communication between the different stages so that sustainability issues and solutions are not lost in the process. The ability of the supply chain to deliver, for example, maintenance contractors needs to understand the specialist equipment and the occupants to understand how the building operates. In conjunction with the various property owners, AECOM have produced a set of guidelines called Managing and Operating Buildings Sustainably, which detail the processes, training and awareness schemes that are necessary for sustainability to be optimised in practice. The critical factor in this process is the creation of a feedback channel that enables occupants and operational staff to inform design and construction teams as to how their ideas have actually worked in practice. In conclusion, sustainability priorities vary globally. In the UK, climate change is certainly high on the agenda, and both adaptation and mitigation of climate change are important sustainability issues. Regulatory and planning and the property and construction supply chain issues must dictate solutions and work together. Sustainability is increasing not only in the UK, but also around the globe, as mirrored by this conference. Tall buildings certainly offer some unique challenges, and it's up to us to make sure that we can deliver that in the context dependent. The building on the right is in fact a concept building, and it was envisioned by AECOM in their submission for the US television programme on future cities. The concept building is called the Stratosphere, 4 times as high as the tallest building, and was the concept of a building for Los Angeles in 2106. This concept foresaw the building having a photosynthetic skin, enabling it to collect solar energy, harvest water vapour from coastal fog, produce oxygen and process carbon dioxide. As a concept, it would act as a giant carbon-negative organism for the city. This might all sound very far-fetched, but as an industry, we need to look into the future, not just to look how we can design and build taller, quicker and cheaper, but also more sustainably. Thank you very much.